like to kick off the Town of Cohasset Sidewalk Committee meeting. Today is June 8th. It is about 11:40. In attendance this evening, we have, after I call your name, just please say aye. Ralph Dormitzer.
Aye.
Jay Pimpare, present. Tori Hanna.
Present.
Ralph Cicchetti.
Frank Cicchetti, I presume you mean, and present.
Yeah, sorry. And Bob Mulhall.
Present.
Great. All right. So we have a quorum of 5 of the 9 members, so we can start the meeting. Thank you all. So the first item of business is topics not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours. And so I do have a topic that I just wanted to bring up and update everybody on, and that is the grants that were submitted last Friday morning. I want to thank Ralph and Frank for your adding in there, really helping out with those 2 grants. So the 2 grants that we did submit, grant applications, were for the one was for the Elm Street Corridor project. I believe I don't have the numbers here in front of me. I believe the grant application was for roughly about $900,000. And so thank you, Ralph and Mike, for being instrumental in helping me out getting that in. And then Frank for really spearheading the effort on the other grant application, which was for the town to put in to address all the pedestrian curb areas to make them ADA compliant. If you remember, back in November, the TEC consultant report addressed that. So we put in a grant for, I believe, $135,000 to address that. And so it seemed like kind of low-hanging fruit on that one. We won't know whether or not the grants are awarded until October. So we'll hang tight on that. We're optimistic. If I hear anything in advance of that, I will let you know. But again, thanks for everybody who participated in that and moving that forward. So fingers crossed we get a little grant money on that. The next item was any questions on the grants? Okay, awesome. And again, we toyed with, just given the timing of everything, there were 2 other projects which we were considering, and that was the King Street sidewalk and also the Jerusalem Road sidewalk. And there was a last minute one about the sidewalk on North Main Street to go to the train station. Rather than kind of just last minute try and put everything together, and talking with a couple of the members one-on-one, and even really at the last meeting, I think we'd all decided that just to put all the kind of eggs in one basket with Elm Street right now, and really focus in on that one and make that as solid as it could be, and move that one forward. And then the next cycle, we can certainly have a little bit more time to prepare, to put together the images. Now I know how to put this grant application together and reconsider those projects and any other projects moving forward for next year. So the next item would have been an overview of the upcoming paving plans. Unfortunately, Brian Joyce couldn't make it to the meeting today. We and unfortunately have not received the estimates yet, final estimates from TL Edwards. They're hoping to have them sometime next week. So it's really tough to discuss projects and prioritize when we really don't know what those numbers are. We're still waiting on Elm Street. Again, I think we've already talked about the projects that we are going to go forward with, Smith Place, etc. Again, I use the term the low-hanging fruit there, so we'll hit those. But it would really great to have final cost estimates for the 2023 and then the 2024 paving plan. So stay tuned on that. I was hoping to have them last meeting, but it's out of our hands. Any questions on that, or? Okay. And so the next item was the overview of the proposed Elm Street plan, hoping to have Mike Sardina on, but unfortunately, as you know, can't make it. Carol, I think Paul might be in the waiting room here. If you could move him up to a panelist, please, that would be great. So what I just did want to share with you is let me just share my screen here, is just to really give you an overview again. We kind of touched upon Elm Street. I just wanted to remind everybody about this really, well, since we've submitted the plans as part of the grant application, really Mike is the leading this effort as far as the design goes and whatnot. And Ralph, please chime in here at any point if I go astray. I just want to share this my screen and just give you just a little bit of an overview. It's by no means I guess the exact plan. I have some questions on the parking, etc., but I don't think the parking is in our realm. It's more of a DPW police kind of issue. But anyway, let me share my screen and just give you a little overview of where we are, or where. See, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me jump back. This is the well, let me find a good one. This is Elm Street going back here to downtown, moving along. Let me get some better ones. Here we go. This one's a decent one. So if I come back here, here's downtown, here's Main Street, and following there's the police station, fire station, coming over to the triangle, and then here is the harbor construction project, and then here is basically where Elm Street ends, where Summer Street comes in over on this side. So this is probably one of the best diagrams, I think. And again, it just gives you a little bit of flavor of the trees. The gray area here, as I understand, is potential parking, excuse me, is the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is widened a little bit. There's green space that's added for the installation of trees. And so of course, these are driveways and these are homes here. So you get a little bit of a sense of what it's looking at. The triangle is not proposed that it can't be moved. The board of select board has already ruled on that. So there's no real changes in design of the road outside of, I think, just expanding the sidewalk and as well as adding some trees and some additional green space along the way here as it goes along. So, personally, I think it's a good concept. I do have some questions, but I don't think it's in our scope here as far as parking goes. On the other side here, I think that's a DPW police issue. As far as accessibility, I don't think we're here to address the parking and the design. It's more of the sidewalk, etc. So, any Ralph, you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, just go back to why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Not simply because we're paving the road, but in 1973, what happened was that the town cut down all the elm trees on Elm Street. And almost from that day forward, everyone bemoaned the loss of those trees. But simultaneously, when they took the trees down, they widened the road to make it 40 feet wide. So there really are two 20-foot wide travel lanes. What we have done is we've said we ought to restore the elms or similar trees. Number two, we ought to restore the roadways to their original designs, which are typically 12-foot lanes. So there are two 12-foot lanes, one direction, one the other. Add in an 8-foot parking lane on the south side. And simultaneously in doing that, we gain the ability to have a 6-foot sidewalk instead of a 5, which is kind of desirable. And then we gain about 6 additional feet of green space, which is adjacent to the roadway. So the sidewalk is separated from the roadway by about a green space of 6 feet in which we will plant the trees. There were a few other things that were critical in this design because of the original working group for Elm Street. And that also included trying to do better work on the crosswalks. So you'll see there are crosswalks. There's one here and the one you've just shown. So we've actually shortened the distance, therefore, so that when you cross the street, you're only crossing about 24 plus 8 or 32 feet instead of 40 feet, number one. Number two, we're making this crosswalk much more prominent. We may be able to do pavers. We're not sure. We're going to try to do pavers there. Then you can see another crosswalk at Sydney Square, which is the park, the green park, as you can see. And if you look up on the north side of that drawing of Sydney Square, we're actually adding a sidewalk there as well, so that you can actually go down that sidewalk all the way to the new Cohasset Hospitality Partners project, where they will have a continuous sidewalk all the way down almost to the Roy property or to the Butler property. So a lot has changed, which is actually making this a nice pathway one way or the other all the way to the harbor. So that's what's going on here.
Great. And again, I know Mike, thank you very much, Ralph. That was a nice little overview, a great overview. And I know hopefully we'll get Mike on to just add a little bit to this as well. But anybody have any questions?
I just have one. I think we touched on this, Ralph, with Mr. Sardina. We don't anticipate any issues, because this is brought up when someone brought up at a select board meeting, we were discussing it. We don't anticipate any issues, and I'm confident that we're not, but I want to get it across the board with the fire department, with mobility of trucks and things like that. Again, I'm going to, on my own, speaking for myself, I don't think we anticipate it, but I'm putting it out there.
That's a really good question, actually, Paul. Initially, we were very concerned about this because the initial design was going to be 11-foot wide lanes. And even though Bob Sylvia and I disagreed on that, he concluded that 11-foot lanes either way would work. When John Dockery came on, we talked about, shouldn't we do this 12-foot lanes? And the answer was yes, we should do 12-foot lanes, which is what the rest of the town has. Yes. Sorry, I'm a little cold. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So that also includes the 8-foot parking. So
Yes.
My only thing is that with the trucks pulling out, an ambulance or something like that, and they're in one hell of a hurry, is they're not going to be any quote unquote collisions with the car across the street if they're parked in front of the house.
Well, no one could say absolutely that would never happen, but the lanes we've provided are actually the same as the rest of the town. So, and according to Dockery, anyway, this is adequate for his use. I was worried more about the ladder truck, to be perfectly honest with you, but apparently we can make the turn.
Thought.
Yeah, the ladder truck's the big issue. Yeah, and he said yes, it works fine.
Good, because
yep.
When we present it, just want to have the I's dotted and T's crossed. I anticipate a few questions in that regard from certain parties involved.
Well, I think the big questions are likely to be the people on the north side of the street who now have the ability to park cars in front of their properties, and assuming let's assume they're going to be landscape trucks, there will still be the problem of landscape trucks that don't have a parking lane on that side. But there's almost nothing. That is typical everywhere in the town. The exception being Elm Street, where we actually have an 8-foot parking lane. So we've actually added lots of ability, but it's not as good as perhaps having a south side or north side parking. We just can't do it. We just don't have the space for it. Yeah.
They have to. I mean, that's all over town. So the way, again, I think that's a T crossed. I'm just. I mean, the landscape company can park across the street and they can move their equipment across to where they have to cut.
That's Yep.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Yep.
My question, and again, I think when we get into the parking, I don't know if this is kind of leaning outside of the scope of this committee. Maybe it might be more of a question to the town. During the day, you've addressed some good questions about landscaping, etc. But how about overnight parking? It's been historical that there's no overnight parking in the area. So that's a question I have, and I don't know if it's a question for this committee to answer as much as it is for the town to answer. But is the expectation that overnight parking would be allowed, Ralph? Or
I don't think we've asked Chief Quigley what signage he wants. So that will have to go to Chief Quigley as to what he wants to have.
Okay.
We have not asked that question. Signage will come up unquestionably at some point in the future here.
Yeah. Okay. That might be a good, nice to do, and I'm happy to reach out to the chief to say, if this, before we start going down the road a little too far here. And again, as you said, it's kind of a little bit of outside of the scope of work here with us as far as the parking's great, but you know, overnight parking, etc. Because when you start to do that, the road just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. Okay. Any other? So let's try and get Mike on to describe a little bit more. Go ahead, Paul.
Jay, I'm sorry. I may have missed this. Did we get? I apologize to the group for being late. Did we get any sort of cost estimate, Ralph, or anything like that yet?
No, we don't. Where we are on this thing is we're waiting for T.L. Edwards, of course, to come in with a number. And then the second thing we're waiting is for the actual what we call a colorized drawing of the CAD file, so that we can have a dedicated meeting, hopefully, Jay, a dedicated meeting of this committee, and really go over it in some detail as to exactly what's being provided. Now, that colorized drawing is probably going to be underway on Monday or Tuesday, and I think Mike Sardina will be back after this weekend and would be able to actually come to a meeting. He has said to me that he's available up to the 13th, which doesn't give us a lot of time, but after the 13th, he'll be back up in Buffalo where his funeral is taking place. So it'll be another week and a week after next week before we actually get to it, I think.
Yeah, and again, Paul, we don't have any of the estimates from T.L. Edwards, unfortunately. I know Brian's been forwarding me messages that he has sent to them. We were hoping to have some estimates today, but we don't have anything. Unfortunately, Brian's not available today, but he wouldn't have had much to provide anyway. Again, hoping that we have these for the next meeting in a couple weeks so that we can move forward. But as you know, and anyone who's listening out there as well, Elm Street, given the many uncertainties and the fact that we're already into the second week of June here, does not appear that it's going to be done in the next month or two here. So we're kind of leaning on this as a spring 2024 project, unless something changes drastically. All right, and then so again, let's get Mike in. Let's talk more in a couple of weeks. Anything else on questions on Elm Street? Anybody from the audience have a question? Just throw it in the chat if you do, or the Q&A, whatever we're calling it here. Okay, so the last item of the agenda, well, anyway, any topics not reasonably anticipated, I didn't ask the rest of the group here within 48 hours that anybody did want to bring up. I know I had one. Great. All right, so the last agenda item is the setting of criteria for the roads and sidewalk and future use. And we started to talk about this at our very first meeting, and we got a little sidetracked because we had other things going on. I think it might be a good idea to circle back to this as far as what we're trying to do and what in setting of that criteria. So can you see my screen? Yes.
It says you're sharing, but I don't see
Black
anything.
right now.
It's black.
Yeah. All right. Let me try it again. So what I was trying to share was the. You see it now?
No.
Nothing yet.
No.
Yeah. All right, let's try one more time.
What are you trying to share?
If you can see my screen. Yeah. No luck?
Nope, nothing yet, Jay.
No.
What is it you're trying to share?
I'm just trying to share the little Word file I have as far as the creating of criteria. And so what I have listed, I've narrowed it down. This is going off of one of the first meetings, was we had the town-wide connectivity, basically connecting the critical neighborhoods, schools, neighborhoods, downtown, harbor, etc., to one another. And under that umbrella, I had which were other suggestions, were the T connectivity, okay, allowing residents to access public transportation, and also the school connectivity. And I believe Ralph brought this up at the last meeting, was developing either like a half-mile or 1 mile radius around the two schools, so that all neighborhoods can access the school. So it was really the number one, or one of the top priorities, was the town-wide connectivity. And I'll just rifle off the other three that I had. The other one was actually the paving and the repairing of existing sidewalks. We have existing sidewalks that are in need of significant repair. So that was also, I don't know if that's actually a criteria, but the last one was recreational use areas, such as the connecting the yacht club, Sandy Beach, Rocky Beach, etc. Recreational use areas in town that don't have that type of connectivity, and bring those in. And then the last one was, I don't know what this is all about, but it was speed limit measures. And so maybe that was where we had issues, that there were a lot of traffic, a lot of volume, and people going faster than they should, and addressing those areas. And Tori, you probably had a comment.
Yeah, that was, I think Julie brought that up on the last meeting around speed limit. Just given the fact that, yes, it's supposed to be town-wide 25, but in the outskirts we're at 30 and 35. For like King Street's a 30 mph, 35, and I think Beechwood might even be up there or whatever. Doan Street might be on the 20. But
let me know if you can see my screen now.
Now we can. Yep.
All right. So this was the list I was working off, and again, I'm happy would like to kind of zero in on this and see. I think it would be great to have like 2, maybe 3 criteria here, that when we do move this forward, and it's only a matter of time before I've already been asked to go in front of the planning board in a couple weeks to give an update on where we are with the sidewalk committee and how the planning board can assist with this. And also I've had some preliminary discussions with a couple of select board members, and individually have said, when you're ready, we would like an update to the select board as well. So I think, again, one of the things that we need to come up front to say, okay, why are we prioritizing these roads and or sidewalks? And I'm really talking about sidewalks here. So I want to spend a few minutes just kind of going over this. And so you see my screen here, and the number one criteria seems to be the general town-wide criteria. Anybody want to comment on that or help us kind of rephrase that a little bit? Or
Jay, do you mind if I add my 2 cents?
Please do. Yeah.
I think with the town-wide right now, we're basically checking a lot of boxes with Elm Street, from the village to the harbor when that comes up. So that was a big thing. But the T connectivity, I'm a little trouble with that, because that's basically 3A. And, as we did the sidewalk primarily on Sawyer Street to nowhere, I don't know how realistic that is, and whether that should be a real priority, or if it is, let people bring it up. I think what we're looking at is kind of what Ralph has said. I think the school connectivity, town safety, Tori had brought it up, King Street, the access, the access is more of the safety than I would think than the T connectivity. I think we're looking at really opening up a huge can of worms of that, to tell you the truth, because we're definitely talking about 3A, or at the very least Main Street. Do we want to open that can of worms, or do we want to let someone else bring that up? The school connectivity, the access to the harbor village, the street safety, I think those are the ones that really would be, and repairing the existing sidewalks and looking for ways to create new ones as needed. Again, dovetailing back to safety. You know, the recreational uses, the yacht club, Sandy Beach, I think that's all okay, but I don't see it as really coming across because the roads are so narrow there and people
Yeah.
getting down. Will we someday maybe be able to do a taking? I don't know. Will people like it? You know, I'm just trying to think of the things that we can hit first
Right.
without really
Yeah.
rocking the boat and creating something that could be like, say, a multi-year project as far as people going back and forth.
So let me circle back, and why I put the T connectivity there was really more of like an example, and that's why I put like A and B. But perhaps maybe I could separate out those two. But I want to get your input here, and maybe put the T connect. And I agree with you. Maybe put like the T connectivity up here, or public transportation, and just as examples.
Again, I'm only a voice. The rest of the board,
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear their
How
input
do
as well.
others feel about that? And again, I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
I think this should all be in like level of priority too. So if we're saying like school connectivity over T connectivity, then I think school should be A, right?
Yeah,
I would agree.
agreed.
And then I think last time on the meeting, the T connectivity came up because there was, I correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that there was some sort of like funds or something. This came up when we were talking about the grants, I believe, Jay.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And we were thinking that maybe it would be a potential for the grant to take on the cost of being able to do that sidewalk on Main Street on the backside, between the dump and the T, right? Not on 3A, Paul, I think is what we
Right.
just talked about.
No, I was thinking Main Street or 3A, Tori. I
Okay.
don't disagree with it at all. And Cedar, that's for Main Street. I mean, I see that. So that's why I was using both. It's just as an example. It's
Yeah.
and about the grants. I don't know if the grants will follow up with, say, we all know there's an affordable housing thing out there, like 348 or something along those lines. They're looking for all towns to do it. And, that's open to debate right now as to what the town is going to support and what they want to do.
Yeah.
But I
Okay,
agree with you
so I
completely about
agree.
the prioritization.
All right, so if we're trying to focus in on a couple here now, so as you can see, I've kind of taken out the T, and I've made the school connectivity a standalone. Townwide connectivity, I'm just using examples there about critical neighborhoods, schools, downtown. If you want me to put public transportation in there, etc., these are merely examples. It's
Yeah.
just a general statement about townwide connectivity and bringing the town together by allowing somebody from, and I'm just using these neighborhoods, from the Greek church at the end of Jerusalem Road to Beechwood. Now, is that ever going to happen? Probably not, but in a perfect world, yes, etc. So
Yeah.
really, that's the sediment there.
The one thing I would say, like on the school connectivity, like I wouldn't want to shove that up into the townwide connectivity, because on the school one, I think something around like developing the safety measures for it, right? Like that to me is a different thing than just like, hey, we want to connect our town. Like we actually want our kids to safely be able to get to and from school. So I would say like the school connectivity being pulled out is the right move there, and not just being part of the townwide connectivity.
Right. So you like it the way it is, like a standalone.
Yeah, yeah.
I
What,
agree with that too.
I might think about putting that as number one.
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah.
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 Well, these are in no
particular.
Yeah, these are in no particular order, but if you want to rate them, then we can certainly do that as well.
I think we should probably. Yeah. We're talking
Okay.
about prioritization.
We did. Yeah, that's where we talk about prioritization. Again, townwide connectivity. I think with doing what we're doing right now is that might even come in number 3. For the simple fact is we're doing it already. So if we have paved repair existing sidewalks, school connectivity, and as Ralph said, develop a 1 mile radius, all around.
so
Now
let
you're
me-
including the Pleasance, you're
Yeah.
including Pond. No, please.
I don't have, so I appreciate that. So let's hone in on the school committee, school connectivity, because it seems like everyone is supportive of that, and I am as well. I just put a 1 mile radius on there. I don't even know. I guess the next thing is to look at what a 1 mile radius really looks like. And you probably hit most of the town, or
Yeah,
a
I'm
good
doing it right
portion
now
of
on
the
the
town.
mass mapper. It's a really big radius, as you would expect. It's not all the town, but it's most of it. I mean, it doesn't reach very far down, say Beach Street. It doesn't quite reach the yacht club to give you a sense of how far, just from the high school I'm talking. But it reaches to past Shaw's. Mile radius is really big.
Oh, it gets Osgood and Deer Hill. Good.
Yeah, so we've got two schools, right? Well, high school, junior high, and then we've got Osgood Deer Hill. So let me work on trying to, unless somebody's already done this, creating a 1 mile radius around those, and then to actually see what that looks like, and get a better picture of that. And if we have to adjust that, smaller or bigger, we will. But is everybody like that, the way that kind of looks there, the school connectivity?
Yes,
I
between the
would
two?
just say to add in can safely access schools. Because I think the whole idea too is like, not just the sidewalks, but let's make sure we do the crossings and all that sort of stuff too.
Safely access schools. Okay.
You know, Tori's got a point there, Jay. You might want to maybe put in parentheses, crosswalks, you know, anything ancillary that comes after that. Crosswalks, et cetera, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's a paint job, but just finding the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me kind of think about this as well. I don't want to put in get too crazy here, but I hear what you're saying, and it's just like everything else. It's typing this out and putting this on paper.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So I will send this out after the fact as well to the rest of the group. And so that if there are any people want to make edits, etc., you know, just send them to me one-on-one, and I'll bring them all together for the next meeting, so we don't violate any open meeting law with sending it around and everybody commenting on these.
Jay, the one thing on 5 there, I think maybe if we switch it to safety measures and then dash speed limit, multi-use paths, like that sort of thing, because I think like some of these streets maybe don't necessarily need sidewalks, they just need like a bike lane or something like that. Like it is more about painting that's less expensive that I
Yep.
think get us through.
About bike lanes,
Walkways, you know, just anything to.
walking path, or I'll come up with some better language. Walking lane. Okay. All
And
right.
then
So
the only other thing that you don't have in here that we talked about is like ADA. Right?
yes, pave, repair existing sidewalks. Let me-
ADA compatibility.
Yeah.
But did we get in? And I'm sorry that did we get in for maybe that ADA grant?
Yeah.
I mean,
So that
130
was submitted.
or 100.
Yeah, that was submitted Friday, Paul. So the 2 grant applications that we did put in, one was for the Elm Street Corridor project, and the other one was for the ADA, to make all pedestrian curb areas ADA compliant. And I think that was $135,000. So come October, we'll find out if we were if we hit those.
No.
Okay, so, all right, so as you see what I see, if we're looking at this, so we've got the school connectivity seems to be the number one priority. Again, and I had no particular order when I threw these together, was the townwide connectivity. And these are basically examples: neighborhood schools, downtown harbor, public transportation, merely examples. And then, and I don't know if whether you want, that needs to be number 2, but again, pave, repair existing sidewalks to be ADA compliant.
To me, Jay, that would be number 2.
Existing sidewalks. So here's the thing.
But then again,
And-
that's what the group thinks. I've just,
Yeah.
that's kind of the low hanging fruit we were talking about, because they're existing, and if
Well,
we get that grant, all the better.
So I hear you, and maybe I need to rephrase this, because it says existing sidewalks to be ADA compliant, but then do we also want to look at, which may be opening up a giant can of worms, is that separately, when it's standalone, pave, repair existing sidewalks? And if you
That's a
say
good
that,
point.
now you say, no, let's look at every existing sidewalk and let's just hit those. Like, outside the high school, it goes up and it goes down, and you've got tree roots and everything else. And there are just some sidewalks that really, so I guess the question is, do you want to focus in on existing sidewalks now that are in need of repair? Is that part of the criteria? Because the way it reads here is just making these ADA compliant.
Then maybe put, if you put pave repair, again, this is subject to what the board thinks, is we put pave repair up to number 2, existing sidewalks, and maybe below it, ADA compliance, or however you want to restructure that.
Let me just some thoughts, Paul, in this thing. Generally, we will do the pave and repair existing sidewalks when we do the streets. So they're kind of, because it's much more efficient if in fact all the equipment is there to do the sidewalks at the same time you do the streets. But to do them independently, the cost probably doubles or triples. So, you have
Right.
to think about, how do you actually accomplish what you want to do, which is to use basically the road paving plan, and adjacent to that, sidewalks on those roads. And so all of the aspects of those sidewalks would there be considered as part of the road paving plan, is the way I look at it.
Well, maybe then, Ralph, excellent point, because I mean, I know that we haven't, which is kind of the genesis of this group, is pave repair existing sidewalks to be ADA in conjunction with the road paving plan. That's an excellent point. Maybe in conjunction, because we haven't, and people are asking, if you look online every now and again, are they going to be doing the sidewalks, or are they just doing the roads? Because historically speaking, we've usually done just what you said. We've gone out, repaired this as needed, and then gone and fixed the sidewalk. So maybe in conjunction with the road paving plan, if you think that's better.
I think
How does that look?
Yeah, that's good. And I will only add, there probably will be exceptions to that, but for the most part, that's probably the most practical way to get things done. So.
How about do I even need to say future? Or is that kind of understood? Future paving plans?
Or with the road, with the road paving plan.
I would take future out, Jay.
Okay.
Because you got plans, you've already got it plural.
Okay. So, all right, so we've got some nice comments on that. And so I've got 2 others, which I want to talk about a little bit more. I think and again, if we're trying to prioritize these, what we had briefly discussed, number 4, creating new sidewalks to connect recreational use areas such as Yacht Club, Sandy Beach / Rocky Beach area. And then we talked about the recreational use areas. Is this real? How heavy do you want to get in on that?
Let me just jump in a little bit on at least the yacht club and the sailing club. What we're doing on Elm Street is to try to make that better, specifically Elm Street, but also the crossing at Summer Street, where we're trying to narrow that road down. So kids coming in either from the sailing club or from the yacht club would make the crossing at the Legion at a decent size. So it's only 24 feet wide instead of the 40 or 50 feet wide, which is what it is now. So we've already started that process on Elm Street. And then secondarily, when we finally get some agreement on what to do on Border Street, we'll then go to sidewalks on Border Street, which extend all the way to the sailing club, of course, and connect back to Elm. So all of that's more or less, at least on paper, in some way, in some sense, a design of sorts has been done. The Elm Street is in detail, and the Border Street one is in some detail, but not a lot. But at least all of those things are going to get done as part of those two projects.
So what I've done is, you see there, I've moved up the recreational use into the townwide connectivity.
Jay, can I throw one in there?
Yeah.
Creating new sidewalks and to connect with Rocky Beach. Well, what about creating and or repairing sidewalks? Because Jerusalem, which I think would be a fantastic sidewalk coming from the restaurants, Maria's and Victoria's, I'm sorry, and the 7-Elevens, and people wanting to access Rocky Beach. Yeah. There is a degraded sidewalk for the most part, going down. But I think that is and or repairing. I'd like to stick that up there because that'd be a hell of a sidewalk to get in. That would be a really nice connectivity piece.
Yeah. So let me just to feed upon that. I do see Mike. Let me get to you in a minute here. Actually, no. You know what, Mike? Let me get to you in a second. I appreciate the comments here. I see those, and hopefully I can share my. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
All right. So this is just one example of how we don't, and then to Paul's point here, and in all the other areas, this is the Greek church. This is North Cohasset. So down the end here is Rocky Beach, and the little lined area that you see there is all town-owned property. So this is Rocky Beach. This is Forest Ave that goes all the way down and leads to Rocky Beach, and this is Jerusalem Road as it comes all the way down to the Greek church, and which, if you take this road out, will connect you to Nantasket Beach and all of the activities at Nantasket Beach. This is a good example about how we have a sidewalk that starts at the Greek church that goes all the way down and then just stops. Ironically stops at the town-owned property, where you're taking your life in your own hands by going down to Rocky Beach and or coming up Forest Ave. So you've got all these neighborhoods in here, the Howe Road, the Windy Hill, which every family on every one of these streets, and Jerusalem Road and the other roads here have families, and where the buses come up and down, and Black Rocks are the same thing, whereby there's no connectivity. So I wanted to share that as an example about how connecting this little piece would allow all residents to actually safely access the area. All right, can you see am I back on the criteria for sidewalks?
Yep.
All right, great. So let me jump back, and Mike Dick is in the audience here. Thanks, Mike. Let me read those questions. Actually, you know what, Carol, can we promote Mike as a panelist here so he can actually talk to us live here? I'm happy to do that.
Yep, I just did.
Thank you. So welcome, Mike. And Mike's threw a question in the chat here, but feel free to speak up if you want, Mike. Hi, everyone. Following your conversations with interest as a member of the capital budget. Capital budget sees maintenance as a critical consideration for our town infrastructure. Would your committee consider adding regular ongoing maintenance as a criteria for sidewalks? And I think absolutely yes. Criteria as the same priority as safety. So it sounds like ongoing maintenance. Let's fit that in a little bit. I completely agree. And welcome, Mike.
Hey, thank you. I know that Ralph is our liaison and very active in this committee.
but I'm retired and I've got too much time on my hands. So when I see a meeting posted that I'm interested in and have real interest, then I do join. So I stated in my comments that maintenance, we have neglected maintenance as a town for decades. And we are now seeing the difficulties that the town faces in having to create many new structures. So we on capital budget feel that maintenance really should be built into our operating budgets, and that we do have a set aside for roads, but not necessarily for sidewalks, not specifically. And my suggestion for you folks to consider is to recommend that regular maintenance on our sidewalks be included in the operating budget along with the roads. That's really the sum of what my thoughts are here.
No, and I appreciate
Could I
that. Yeah,
Could I answer that?
sure.
Mike, I believe that we have. We're looking at going forward, and I think the board was, Jay, and you can concur or disagree, but I believe that we're seeking an ongoing maintenance budget is once we get done doing what we have to do. But we are following up with increasing the budget for roads and sidewalks as an ongoing thing. And I don't think I'm mistaken that, am I, Jay?
No, and I think Brian mentioned it last time, with the
Yeah.
budget, and I'm using just some total kind of somewhat rough numbers here. If we had $1.1 million in the budget to address from the DPW budget for the roadway paving plan, et cetera, and if we dedicate 600,000 for one project and 100,000 for 5 other projects, we've added up 1.1 million. We've spent that, as Brian reminded us, is that doesn't include some of the regular maintenance and some of the things that also eat into that budget area. And I don't know, it's like a couple weeks ago, they did the line striping during an overnight project. I don't know if that money also eats into it. So there are the monies that eat into our overall budget. So while we say we have 1.1 to pave, we really don't have 1.1 million to truly dedicated to paving alone. But you raised a great point.
He did say, though, when we talked last week, that as we went on, yes, we're going to spend some money on the infrastructure, but as we went on, those monies would de-escalate the costs. Then we swing into more of the maintenance costs. So it was something that we factored in. It's just, again, we're in a rock and a hard place, as Mike put it perfectly. The roads and sidewalks have been allowed to degrade. We're going to attack it. I think that then we would, at the end of the day, come up with an operational budget.
Let me add in a little bit about what I understand about line painting. Whenever we do a road, we also factor in the cost of doing the line painting. But in the time between that road is constructed and the very next time it's constructed, the DPW budget has to carry the additional line painting, which is done annually in the spring of every year. So the way it works is whenever we do a road, we do all the line painting and all the signage. Everything else is considered when the road is actually repaved. But that annual number is associated with line painting, which has to continue to go on. And that's separate.
So I've tried, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
So I've tried to address that comment, like pave/repair, or I don't know, maybe even paving is taken out as part of an ongoing maintenance plan for existing sidewalks to be ADA compliant in conjunction with. How does that word verbiage look?
Personally, I think that's right. I might suggest changing the word plan to spending, so that your committee is recommending money be spent on regular maintenance. Now that's my particular perspective, but if this committee agrees, then I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
Frank,
that.
I've seen you. Frank, you have your hand up. Let me go back to Frank here. Sorry, I was got a little sidetracked there. Frank, yeah, I know you had
No
a
worries, it
comment.
was from a little while ago. I agree with Mike's point, though. I think that emphasizing the spending for maintenance is valid and a good point. My point was just about the recreational point 4 there. I think it might make sense just because the scope is so vastly different for the yacht club versus the 2 beaches to maybe break out harbor connectivity or safety separate from beach connectivity. Just because, as Ralph was saying, as we develop Elm Street and I think Border Street, we can connect to the yacht club and the sailing club and the park there a lot easier than reaching all the way out to Sandy Beach and Black Rock. So I think maybe just because of the vast differences in scope there, it might make sense to break them out either as far as prioritization or just showing them as separate projects. Just the harbor,
Yeah.
which is a town asset with some recreational activities on it that we want to connect to, and then separately other great town assets being the beaches that are just huge scale trying to get sidewalks out there, just so that we don't get bogged down with the complexity of trying to connect to the beaches when we just want to do a 200-yard sidewalk to get to the yacht club or something like that.
All right, so let me just hit upon that recreational use, then jump back to the operation maintenance plan there. So I've kind of reworded that a little bit as of what I'm hearing. We pull out the harbor there, creating new sidewalks to connect recreational use areas as examples only, Sandy Beach, Rocky Beach.
Okay.
Any other examples about recreation areas? I mean,
Well, I think the harbor, I just was maybe emphasizing the harbor as being a distinct one that is really important and also more easy to achieve than the beaches. So I think that that's definitely want to include the harbor with the sailing club and the yacht club as recreational assets that we should try to get sidewalks to. I think it's gonna be a lot easier to connect to those than to the beaches. So I want to maybe, I think it makes sense to break them out or emphasize the harbor as something that's recreational in and of itself with those clubs on it.
Well, so I've got harbor up here.
Hmm.
You know, as a critical neighborhood school downtown harbor area, and
Yep.
Bob also has recreational use, etc. You know, as Ralph kind of pointed out, where the plans are already in place to hit the harbor. I mean, it's almost, it's really there now.
Sure.
So you might consider actually they're making the harbor your number 2 priority, and townwide connectivity falls below that. In other words, because these are realistic things that can get done, I think. If the harbor, it's a higher priority and more likely to actually occur, I think.
Right.
Well,
I think
well, let me just ask: do we already have connectivity to the harbor? It might not be the way people want it, but I mean, we already have it through Elm Street. We don't have it coming in from Atlantic, but we've got it from Summer, and we can only do so much on the other end. I'm looking at ways we get into the harbor. I would say, 95% of the way people come into the harbor would be through Elm or Summer. We already have an existing sidewalk there.
Yeah, we have pretty good connectivity, basically from the yacht club, except for the one portion at the top of the rise, actually on Margin Street, where it narrows down to practically nothing. Now that is getting corrected. So what may actually happen out of all of this is once the Cohasset Hospitality Partners finishes their work, there will be a sidewalk adjacent to their property. And then there would have to be a crosswalk when their property ends going on to the other side of, in that case, Margin Street. And there is a sidewalk there. So you would have a sidewalk therefore all the way to Howard Gleason Road. So that's all quite doable, as it turns out.
Yeah. So I think we're certainly getting into the details of all this, which was great.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get like big picture as far as the criteria, where before we take the next step, which is a good next step, not on this call, but moving forward, is getting a deeper dive into the actual sidewalk condition. So again, this really, the criteria is for select board, general public, etc. when they say, well, what areas are you actually looking at? And so all of these, the details will fall into this. All All right, so let me jump back to, so it's focusing on that, creating new sidewalks to connect recreational use areas. Examples, the harbor, Sandy Beach, Rocky Beach, or should I just say beaches, harbor/beaches? Or if people like that, Sandy Beach, we only have 2 beaches in town that I'm aware of.
Jake, I don't know if you can see my hand up. I'm just throwing this in. I think that somehow we should break out Jerusalem, because you hit the nail on the head. People coming off Windy Hill, Howe Street, families. And it's an existing sidewalk, degraded as it is. I think that is kind of a key area, you know, not so much for you know, access, but it is for the kids, it's for safety, and it is for access to the beach if people want to walk down. And again,
I completely agree. Yeah.
That's an existing sidewalk right now. And so that's what I'm going with it. And you know, we're working up in the Beechwood area. We have North Cohasset, I'm sorry. I think that, and we're also concentrating the village in that area and the access to the schools. So I do think Jerusalem, I'm sorry, is kind of a key component, because again, we have an existing sidewalk. It's degraded to hell, but it's there.
Right. So I completely agree with you. I think that, again, this is, we're not trying to specifically identify examples of the road. We're just setting up the criteria so that if and when, to your point, that as an example, this committee or someone in town were to propose that project, it actually fits under our criteria. So I don't think we're setting, you know, we're looking at areas of town, but we're not identifying exact projects under the criteria. It's just this criteria so that when we find a project or want to move a project forward, it actually fits under the criteria. And certainly the project you're describing, which I support, it hits a criteria. So I think we're good there.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I said this, and I apologize to the whole group, is that there is now, you may or may not know, and you probably know, so I'm reinventing the wheel, is that Justin at Town Hall did set up a road and sidewalk committee website. So it's up and running. So the town can go on, and they want to make the suggestions. I mean, I encourage everyone to look at it. But it is up and running. You know, we had that one, I keep an eye on once in a while on 143 to see what the general consensus is, and some that, well, we don't have a website. Well, yes, we do. So we address that concern. So it might be worthwhile taking a look to see what suggestions are, and if people, but they have access to it now, so they can't say that we didn't do it.
And that's a great point, Paul. I was going to mention that, so I thank you for reminding me about that, and I'll send that link out to everybody. All right, so just to jump back here, I know we're running a little bit, getting close to our time limit. I respect everybody's time moving forward here. I want to just jump down to the safety measures. Well, let's jump back to the ongoing maintenance spending plan. What I have here, number 3, is pave repair as part of an ongoing maintenance spending plan for existing sidewalks to be blah, blah, blah. Any comments on that? And again, I will send this out to the entire committee.
I would, sort of reflecting, I think what Paul said, that it's spending plan is okay, but what we really mean is part of the operating budget of the town, the annual operating budget, which is much more specific.
So what are you recommending here, Ralph?
I'd say it's an ongoing maintenance under the operating budget for the town, or under the operating budget, right?
Ralph, what about infrastructural and
Under the operating budget?
I think that what I'm really, the only point I'm making here is that we want maintenance to be something that is budgeted in the operating plan annually for the year, is what the point I'm making here, right?
Okay.
And
so you might put that, and I don't know, Ralph, if you'd agree, but infrastructural and ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, no, on infrastructure, the only thing I would separate out, Paul, and I don't know exactly how we would do it, is that when these are new ideas, that is new sidewalks, they don't come under the maintenance plan. They come under a separate budgeting item. So, but I don't know if infrastructure confuses that or doesn't confuse it. I just don't know. So.
Nope, I'll stand on what you said.
Yeah.
So let me jump down to
Okay.
number 5 here so we can wrap this up.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
There's one other overarching consideration to add or to consider for your criteria. And that is the consultant's reports to the town on our roads and sidewalks. Brian Joyce shared that with the Capital Budget Committee
Yeah.
about 6 to 8 months ago. The prioritization is built into those reports. And that may help inform your criteria as well, in terms of those roads and sidewalks that really are in dire need. That's all provided in these reports.
I agree with that. The way I would do that, Mike, is I would make that, if you in fact talk about a radius from the schools, you would then take that and take a look at what that report says and say,
Yep.
which of the sidewalks within that radius that they have identified should we be
Right.
working with? So that's how you do it. So, but because they made no criteria, their only criteria was the sidewalks weren't good, or they were very good or they were partially good, whatever the names were. But they didn't really tie that to a criteria. Like, for example, we want to make sure the kids can get safely to school
Correct.
within the mile. So you
Correct.
need to tie it to the criteria is all I'd say.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I'm just address the needs of the town's consultants 2022 report.
Perfect. Very good.
Now, whatever. I'll fix this up here after the fact. Okay, so we're at 6 criteria, which is probably a good number. I don't know how many more, and maybe a couple of these can be grouped. What I think it would be best to do is for me to, first of all, save this and then send this out to the group, the rest of the committee members, for any comments individually. I'll make that note if anybody would like to wordsmith this a little bit, and I know you will, Ralph. So, which is great, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I wasn't sure you were sincere, to be honest with you, but okay.
Well, it's funny because I sent the social media post, which I will not be doing ever again, on 143, announcing the paving of the roadway, and Ralph changed it. I said something like will be paved from the town line down along Doan to the fork or Church Street down to the fork in the road that follows Doan up to the Beechwood Playground stop sign. And Ralph changed it to something else. And then somebody commented and said, "What an odd way to describe a project." I didn't have the heart to say, I didn't write those words.
You can't win on there.
Yeah, no, you can't. Yeah,
It's
and somebody posted it yesterday or the day before about Beechwood, and then the comments are, "Oh, yeah, they're gonna pave the bad area, though it looks like they're paving the new area and leaving the bad area unpaved."
Mhm.
It's like, I don't have time to get into the social media back and forth with knuckleheads.
No, I'll be looking for my ball bearings and tires. And
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So anyway, let me save that and send it out to the group with a request to edit that a little bit if you like, and then based on the individual comments that come back at the next meeting, let's hone in on that and let's really prioritize them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever they are. Does that sound like a good step moving forward? Okay.
That's good.
All right. All right. I know this probably went a lot longer than I thought it was going to go. And anybody have any additional comments?
Nope. Got to
All
jump
right.
into a meeting.
How about a meeting I am away all of next week. So unless somebody wants to meet without it, let's try and circle back in 2 weeks. How does people's schedules look like for like the 20th, or how about the 20th at 11:30?
That's fine.
That work for most?
Yeah.
Could we make that specifically to take a look at the Elm Street project then also?
Yeah, it'll
Okay.
basically be the same agenda once again. Elm
Okay.
Street, an update from Brian, Elm Street and prioritization of the criteria. Okay, all right, let's do that then. Let's set the next meeting for 11:30 on the 20th. All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, I appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.
See you guys
Thank you.
later.
Guys.
Bye.
Thanks.